Hey guys, I hardly speak any Spanish, so I apologize for that to begin with. I barely speak one language, so this is going to be a little bit different topic that I'm going to talk today. I know all the speakers here spoke generally about big data and big data related things, but I'm going to talk about APIs, and the topic is I put a wrong topic there, but it's the same thing: building intelligent APIs, or how APIs fuel innovation, right? So how many of you know what an API stands for, or use an API? Okay, that's a fairly decent number, because last speech, similar speech I gave at a conference, I asked them, and only 2 or 3 hands went up, which was kind of difficult to explain what an API is and then start talking about it. So that's me. I'm a program director for IBM for API, IoT, and Connected Cloud. Those are my social handles, if you want to follow me. So what happens in a minute? Let's start off with that, right? Man, the lights are so blinding. What happens in a regular minute, other than the 60 seconds? Well, not much, right? You sit there and get bored, not much happens in a minute. That's in a realistic, regular, literal minute, right? But what happens in the internet minute? If you ask the question, the answer would be different. Quite a lot happens. A lot of things happen within a minute. All of those things, what you see in there, that all happens in 1 minute. We collect terabytes of data, moving towards zettabytes of data in every single minute. Why did this happen? It's because we have gone digital, right? Everybody wants to use their digital devices, whether it's mobile devices, tablets, or IoTs of late, or something else. So essentially, we are moving to a digitization of our economy, and we all want to have access to our data when we want it, how we want it. So a few years ago, mobility was a luxury. Anybody still have a cell phone looking like that? I had a similar phone one time, not as bulky, but the cell phones used to look like that about 10 years ago. But now, the mobility has become a necessity, right? Almost every one of you have a cell phone, smartphone, right? It's a smart computer, in a sense. So the digital age is powered by mobility, right? True? Yes? Right. But I'm going to prove a point that the foundation for the digital economy is more than just the mobility itself, because mobility is only one piece of it. Mobility is what we call it as I'll explain that a little bit later, is what we call it as a system of engagement that we are using to engage in the digital economy. But that in itself is not digital economy, right? There are other technologies, as you see there, that allow you to participate in digital economy. Big data is a big thing that enable you to store all this information, process all this information, tons of information, so digital economy can thrive. Your Internet of Things, right? How many of you wear some kind of body media here, body armor, that's connected to the internet? I can't see with the lights, but I don't see any hands going up. So this is not the IoT crowd then? Wow. And it's a quiet crowd too. You can make it as a dialogue too, right? So essentially what that means is that the cloud computing, the social media, the big data, the Internet of Things, all of that is connected to your backend systems, not one-to-one. And that's a point I'm going to make here today. It's all connected via APIs, right? So the enterprises are using APIs as a foundation for the digital economy, right? As they are building digital economy, they don't want to build everything end-to-end. They are using APIs as a foundation building block. So we spent about 30 years, in some cases even more, 40 years, 50 years, in perfecting our backend systems, which will include all of those things: your CRM systems, your SOA-based foundation, your SOAP services-based things, your ERP systems, your private clouds. So we finished building all the backend systems, which are robust, scalable, what I call it as an enterprise grade, right? But in the process, what had happened is that we forgot to tell the front-end guys, hey, this is what we are building, right? So they went on to build their own gobbledygook, right, kind of crap, using JSONs and other formats that doesn't even fit in the backend. So it brought an interesting problem. What had happened is, if you have to build something from the backend, connect it to the front end, whether it's enabling new customers or enabling new partners or bringing new mobile devices or website or IoTs or any of that, you have to build from here, I don't know if you can see that, from here all the way in here. Every single time an engagement comes in, you have to build it, end-to-end systems. So what's the problem with it then? I mean, you could build everything end-to-end. It's not a big deal. The problem is because the systems what we built, the back-end systems, are way too restricted systems, right? And it's too hard, very inflexible, and not adaptive. And it's too expensive and way too slow. So what that means is, if you have to build a new connectivity, new system of engagement, every single time you have to build from the back end all the way to the front end, it took too much time. And in the digital economy, if it takes too much time, you're done. All right? People are going to move on. So in order to build properly in the digital economy, you cannot start from the back end, build all the way to the front end. You need a baseline where you can start from. You need a reference point that you can start from. You need some intelligence moved to the front end or closer to the front end, not at the back end. So I want to establish certain naming conventions that IBM's point of view and or generally that we use. SOR, when I mentioned that, it stands for system of record. That's your back-end systems that we talked about. Your databases, your ERPs, your CRMs, where the data consolidation, data storage, and data processing happens in the back end. And then system of engagement, which is the front end, which is the mobile devices, which is the devices that you're used to engage in the back-end systems. Could be mobile devices, could be websites, could be IoTs, could be whatever else, right? Appliances. And then there was a need for SOI was established. That stands for system of interaction. So you have a back-end system, and if you're going to build that for every time to the front-end system, as I said, it's going to take too long, which means you need a system of interaction to be established. You need to build some intelligent APIs or intelligent interfaces that sits halfway in between or closer enough to the system of engagement so you don't have to build it every time. So the issue we have with this very fast-moving digital economy is the SOE needs have changed. You agree with that? All right? How many of you are still using just this? Only websites. That's so 90s, right? So 2000. The system of engagement has changed. The connected cars, right? If you buy a new car, which has unbelievable amount of things that are connected to the internet, produces volumes of data, and that data need to be put somewhere, processed somewhere, and you need to build a profile of the user of the car, right? And also the connected appliances, gaming consoles, smartphones, internet TVs, all of this need a way to connect to your backend systems. So basically, that's what I classified as system of engagement, SOE, earlier on. So it has changed. More things are coming. This is only a sample, right? It doesn't stop at this. More things are coming, right? And the issue two, this is a very common issue I see at a lot of enterprises. So the mobile devices, mobile proliferation as we call it, is pretty big now. Every company wants to get some mobile applications out. So they go to their IT and say, hey, can you build an application for me that my users, my employees, my users, my customers can access? And the IT is going to turn around and say, yeah, sure, but it's going to take 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, right? And they don't have time to wait around for that. So what they're going to do is that they're going to build their own mobile channel, their own mobile app. So the problem with that is marketing is going to build their own mobile applications, touching your back-end enterprise systems data, right? Support is going to build their own. Finance is going to build their own. Sales is going to build their own. And IT is going to build their own infrastructure, taking their own sweet time to consolidate to run this. When I go and talk with the C-level executives, especially the CIOs, they say that, I'm not able to cope up with this demand that comes in from all these different units, asking me to build these things. I can't, just too much. So I'm putting a mobile initiative through. And then the CMOs and sales officers and others who has the money, who already built the applications, keep telling this guy saying, well, you can build at your own pace, but I already have built 20 applications without your knowledge, and I'm maintaining it. So the problem is, they already built from the enterprise backend data with no governance, no regulation, no security, no policies, all the way to the front-end mobile applications, touching your company's enterprise backend systems data. That time it becomes more of a liability. Your mobile application becomes more of a liability than an asset. I recently wrote a piece on that particular one. When is your mobile application or API becomes a liability instead of being an asset? So you need to be careful about that. Related to that issue is, remember we talked about how this marketing, sales, and everybody who can build an application is going to build an application. There is an interesting problem that comes out of that. Most times when they build it, they don't have the expertise to build mobile applications. They don't have an intelligent baseline that they need to start with, which means they will build something. To be honest with you, most times it's crap. They take something, build something, they think it's good. But the problem is, users have so many applications in their mobile applications that they could use. You're fighting for the mobile real estate, right? So if you don't build an engaging application, people are not going to start using your applications. They're going to reject it. Your users are going to reject it. That rejection can come simply because the user experience was not good, the usability was not good, it was not providing the data what they were looking for, it probably was not providing the enterprise greatness what you're looking for, or maybe the application itself was a liability, whatever the case may be. But the problem is, at the end of the day, if your sales organization or marketing organization, let's say, builds 20 applications, and 18 of them gets rejected, that is all the money that was wasted, because it was not built from an intelligent baseline to begin with, right? So how do you avoid that? Well, then comes this concept of what we call it as API first. How many of you heard the term API first? Just one guy. Just one guy. All right. So he's the first guy. So years ago, that's just a classic example that I was having was for the bank up there. When we have to do business with a bank, we used to go to the branch, do the transaction, right? Then came the toll-free way of doing business with them. Then came the website way of doing business with them. Now, most of the banks that I know, almost all big banks, have APIs as channel. So which means they force their partners, force the user base, a newer developer community, to build mobile apps using the APIs that they're exposing, rather than getting direct access to their data, right? Gartner estimates by 2016, about 50% of the B2B collaboration is going to be using APIs. And that number, what I have in there, that's a bit dated. It's a little older number. It's a lot more than 10,000 public APIs now. So in an API economy supply chain, how this works, right? So we talked about this. You have enterprise assets, sometimes mostly controlled, governed, sensitive assets. You create APIs out of them, and you publish those APIs, whether it's public, private, or partner APIs. And the developers could be your internal developers, or could be your external developers, or partner third-party developers, can pick up these APIs, build mobile applications. And we'll publish that mobile applications into a marketplace. That could be an internal marketplace or external marketplace. And you can also govern that, saying that, who can get to see my apps. not everybody wants to download it will be able to download it. I could say, this user community, this identity can come here and look at my apps and download that. But if some John Doe comes from the internet, they won't be able to see the application to download it, right? And then the end users will download that applications, will start using it based on whether you allow them to do it or not. So APIs, when you create them, it can be classified generally into 3 categories. Public APIs, which are almost all the socialistic or digital native companies do, Facebook to LinkedIn to OpenTable to all of these guys, Twitter, though Twitter is a little bit different because they kind of changed their public API into a semi-protected API, so it's a major issue. Snapchat and well, Snapchat is a different issue. So they all have public APIs. So what they do is that they publish it somewhere, and then you go and find those APIs, and then you start building an app using that. When I say app, it doesn't have to be purely a mobile app. It could be IoT-based app, could be a web app, could be whatever, right? So the point is, when somebody build an API, you don't have to go all the way to the back end. They already built half of that halfway to you, and then from there you will start building the newer mobile applications. So what that means is that the intelligence has been brought from the back end all the way to that API level, right? And then from there you will start building it. And the second type would be what I call it as a protected APIs, in which case you build APIs and publish it to some of your partners who can start building applications. And the third type would be what I call it as a private ones, in which you build APIs and you publish this only for your internal developers, your company's internal developers, that they can come and start building applications using that. So why do you have to build APIs? Well, the business model using APIs, it creates additional channels for revenue, right? One is, like I said, you could just do the whole thing for free. Facebook is a classic example. I'm just naming one each there, but I can come up with hundreds of them. You just put the API. You don't do anything with that. It's just another channel as a multi-channel, right? And just giving a better user experience. You don't charge for it, but you'll figure out a way to make money in a different ways. Facebook is a classic example. The other one could be developer pays. For example, Amazon exposes multiple services. There are other examples as well, but Twilio maybe. Developer will pay to use that API. Why? Because the value that you add into the app, what you're building using that API, is way too high that when your app gets multiple times downloaded and people start using it, you can monetize that somehow. You can make a lot more money than what you're paying for that API to that API provider, right? The other way would be what Google does, classic one. The developer gets paid. That if I'm developing something, Google will give me money to build that into my applications, whether it's search, GPS, maps, cognitiveness, predictive APIs. And then because others are using Google through them, Google makes money out of that. And the last one would be an indirect way. eBay is a classic example. And also, if you're having a partner APIs, that could be an example too. That you build APIs, and then you put it out there for them to come and find it and build something that you can create a revenue channel out of that. So essentially what we establish is just having a backend and connecting it to it every time to the system of record is not good enough. You need to have a flexible and easy system interface. We call them APIs, right? APIs. API stands for B, right? Yeah, first time when I came in for actually it was Madrid, maybe 3 years ago, I came in for an API strategy conference, and everywhere they had B pictures. And I had no idea why they had B. I was like, how is this related? And somebody explained to me, API is B, so that's why they have it. So unfortunately, I don't have B's in my presentation. So why APIs then, right? Essentially because that's why. So what happens is, if you build applications in here, let's say, right, that somebody is communicating with your backend system, you should be able to measure, control, manage, monetize, and scale. but more importantly, you should be able to secure. For example, let's say, do you all know Snapchat? Do you guys use Snapchat? Mostly teens use it. You use it? Mostly teens use it. But in any case, Snapchat had a similar issue in the past. I wrote an article about it, about undocumented APS issue. What they did was everybody who's producing a product nowadays, or a solution, or a service, is going API first. So Snapchat produced interface to their, Snapchat is a service in which you can take pictures, snap pictures, and then exchange that with your friends, who's in your friend circle. And then when they get to, after they see the picture disappears from the servers. It gets cleaned out. So privacy is protected, right? So what had happened is they put their APIs out, and there are a couple of other mobile app producers use that API because they were not doing these things. They just had an open API. So they used that and built apps using that. So that mobile apps, people who are downloading it, especially, as I said, teenagers, and sending, naked pictures, exchanging between themselves. And Snapchat, though the servers deleted that, the third-party intermediary in between saved all those pictures. And recently, about terabytes of pictures, hundreds of thousands of pictures were leaked. And they were going through a lot of legal trouble simply because this underage teens who use that. But essentially, the problem is because they built APIs, they built a service essentially, and they built an API, but they forgot to secure that APIs. And they claimed it's an undocumented API. I didn't tell you guys that I had an API. I put it for our people to use, so you shouldn't have used it. And unfortunately, in the API world, or in the digital world for that matter, the honor system never works, right? So you have to control that. And that point becomes your control point. That's where you can control everything that goes in and out of your enterprise. Not only you can measure it, you can control it, you can secure it, you can monitor it, but more importantly, you can also monetize it. You can see the traffic that's going in and out. You can always say, okay, this person or this service is using it this much, we got to start charging them. You should be able to visualize that and see that. That's really important digital economy. Because right now, most of the companies in the digital economy are not monetizing it properly, in my view, right? They are giving everything for free, hoping that it'll gain traction and they can make money in the future, right? But that's the place where you'd be able to control and then measure and then monetize it. Also, the second thing is, I keep saying mobile. What is mobile? If you ask somebody, they'll say, okay, my tablet, my smartphone is mobile, right? But really? Google Glass is considered mobile, right? Your gadgets that you wear and your body armors, those are considered mobile devices, right? Your Nest thermometer or any kind of climate adjusting internet connected devices, those are considered mobile. So the concept of mobile devices is changing. Unfortunately, every one of them want to connect to your systems. If one is connected, why not the other one, right? So essentially, in order to build effective APIs, when you build this thing in here, the whole idea of building this would be you need to build intelligence to it, meaning not only that it will be able to talk to the smartphones, tablets, or even game consoles, but also it should keep the need in mind of connected cars might want to connect to your system, right? For example, if how many miles the car is run, whether it'll need some service maintenance things, the parts, analysis, all of those things. You should be able to collect that data into your backend systems. You should be able to process it. Then you can make recommendations back to the consumer, right? Saying that, a friend of mine was telling me that he was driving, all of a sudden he got a text saying that, your service is way overdue now, and you're just passing by our dealership. If you come in, I'll give you 50% off. And he had time, so he pulled in and got it serviced, right? Probably if somebody does it to me, I'll sue them, saying that, you know everything about me. That's not a good thing, but that's where the digital economy is going. The connected appliances, whether you like it or not, all your appliances that are connected to the internet, and they know how many hours you use your refrigerator, or how do you use your thermostat to control your room temperature. The internet TVs. So effectively, you need to build some intelligence in here properly. So when you're building all these things, all the formats are supported. The conversion is supported. The security is supported. The governance is supported. So this will all become like what I call it as a drop-in device. You don't have to keep building it. So if you built one already, then when you have to do the next one, the intelligence is already built in. You can just drop it and start programming, right? So what is API management, essentially? So we talked about API, and API. So what is API management, and how do you manage that? The first step would be from your backend systems, the existing systems, what you already have, you need to create and assemble a version of API. That should be fairly easy enough that you just configure an API. It should not be more like you sit and program. Most of the guys, when they build APIs, they program it. So you should be able to configure and create an API out of your existing systems. And share it with the developer communities, collaboration, community management. So essentially what you need to do is that you need to take your APIs and give it to people, put it in a place where they can come and find it. It shouldn't be in a way that you share things with them one at a time. You have a dashboard, you have a place somewhere, a catalog, that they'd be able to come and find, okay, I need to build an application. These are my requirements. Search for it, then I should be able to find it. If I'm looking for a banking API, I do a search and then find the list of things, and these are the banks that it has, maybe Citibank, maybe Bank of America, whatever that may be. I find specific APIs, and then I start implementing it. And then we talked about this secure control and scale the APIs at some place. And that has to be at that API point. And then you have to analyze, monitor the API usage. So those are the 4 effective steps you need to do at a minimum in API management. When API management is done right, you have your backend services, all this mainframe to enterprise services and whatnot. You publish, the API providers or owners publish that into a dashboard or a catalog somewhere, and the developers, and then that gets implemented into a gateway, and the developers come and find it automatically and implement services. That can go to your backend. It's as simple as that. So when you do this, what happens is, if you have to build from here all the way to here, it's going to take weeks or months. You need to build it, test it, make sure it's enterprise grade, secure it, policy, and approve, have the security guys approve it, and then you can release it. But if you have to do this piece of it, what happens is this one you have to publish only once, right? Once you publish this once, whoever wants to build a new app or whoever wants to build for a new device, Netflix is a great example for this. You don't have to go all the way back in here all the time. Half of that is already done. Only the rest of it need to be built, right? So the essential to engage in a mobile enterprise or the digital enterprise is you need to identify your enterprise assets that you want to engage in your digital economy or mobile economy. Package them into mobile APIs. Build enterprise-grade mobile apps using their APIs. Provide a great user experience, but also get the insights into the user experience. Because if you don't know what your user is doing, you're shooting blind. And finally, figure out a way to monetize that. So at IBM, we call this as a composable enterprise. I call it as it's not only composable, but also it's controllable mobile enterprise. So what that means is, I have my enterprise assets. In the old days, when I were to create applications, I have to do it one at a time. Every single time I need to build something, I keep building it. But instead, in the newer digital economy, in the API economy, I build APIs, and I put it somewhere. An army of approved developers will come and do the work for me. And I already built half for you, and those guys or girls come and build the rest for me. right? And then they publish it. The users will go and find it, whether it's a Apple Store or Google or even your own private place. Every enterprise is starting to have their own private app store. And your users find it, download it, start using it. But the greatness about this is, this whole thing, what we are talking about is the public users coming in from outside using it. But you can use the same APIs for your internal users to come build applications only your internal folks can use. The actual traffic is going here, the entry point is here, but the apps that is built by your internal developers will have a different set of controls, and these apps that are built in, that are published in a place no one else can see, which means only you get to see, you get to control, you get to enforce a different set of policies and security and controls. So API allows, this is what I call it as innovation meets enterprise, right? Because the enterprises always are known as clunky, big, too huge, hard to change, inflexible. And then the newer companies, the digital native companies, are all working in the mode of innovation mode, get things done, innovate everything, build things fast, make people want more of it. And the enterprises can move in that fast manner. So by building APIs, what you could do is that not only you can have your own users build that, you can engage some of those companies who are doing that work by saying, hey, I built an API for my backend system. I will leave it at halfway. You come here, pick this up, build something for me. And once they build it, that's where, how many of you know what a hackathon is? So when you go to a hackathon, mostly it's the APIs that are exposed, right? There's a company out in Boston, Smart Bear, which does what is called a virtual APIs. So you don't even have to publish actual APIs out there for them to build. You can stub it out and create what's called a virtual API and have these companies come and innovate against that API, which looks and feels the same as the original API. And then after the hackathon is done, you pick up 5 or 10 applications saying that, these guys built great things for me. I pick the top 3. You come and build more things for me. I'll continue to give you APIs, measured, controlled, and you can build on top of it. How are we doing on time? Five minutes more? Okay. Okay. So I have a couple of samples here for industry-specific examples. So we talked about just the technology piece of it here. I want to give an idea of how this in real life it works, right? Because it's all just make-up talk so far. So let's say that I want to do things in an API way, right? Let's say the insurance company publishes a bunch of APIs. Bank publishes a couple of APIs. Auto dealer publishes a bunch of APIs. Map provider, GPS provider provides a bunch of APIs. And we do a bunch of APIs too, including Watson, cloud provisioning, and Xtify, right? So let's see how this all come into life. So let's say cars.com want to build an application. What they'll do is that they could build the insurance auto APIs, insurance industries, which when somebody wants to buy it, they could do things like, okay, I want to know the person's location. Based on the person's location, I will use auto dealers' APIs to check for available cars on what I need. So when I say based on my locality, keep in mind the locality can change because I might be checking that using my mobile phone. So if I check from my home, then the cars available within my vicinity will be shown. And if I'm traveling, I could get to choose show the cars next to my home or show these cars next to where I am. So basically, get my location, get the availability based on that. And if I'm interested, It could also go and check with the bank using their API, saying that based on this car, based on your credit personal information, your monthly payment will be this much. And if I'm still further interested, you can also do the calculation based on the insurance APIs and say your insurance premium is going to be this much. So basically, a website or an application is using multiple APIs with the intelligent, pre-built intelligent with every one of them, can build a composite application using that. The other side of that would be, if I'm a provider, if I'm a bank, then how can I benefit by using these APIs, by publishing these APIs, right? It could be that I could publish multiple APIs, mortgage, online payment, loans, and account query, and so on and so forth. If somebody is using Mint, it could use to bank query all your accounts in multiple banks and consolidate your personal information. The cars we already talked about, how that'll work. If I'm using Zillow, if I'm looking for a property, it could say, okay, that property costs this much, your credit score is this, and based on that, your monthly payment is going to be this much, your loan value will be this much, and all that kind of calculations. So there are a couple of more examples I have in the banking too. Branch locators, forex rates, rewards management, and so on and so forth. So that was my last slide. So I'll leave the floor open for any questions.